beloved of the Lord, in the mighty and matchless name of Jesus. Today we enter this Sunday wrapped in gratitude, overflowing with joy, and expecting uncommon blessings from the hand of God. This is not just another day. This is a divine appointment with breakthrough, favor, peace, and restoration. Have you come expecting God to do something extraordinary in your life today? Tell me in the comments, what are you thanking God for in this season of your life? Some of you have survived battles you never thought you would overcome, and yet you are still standing by the grace of God. Some of you cried through the night, but heaven preserved you for this very moment. Isn't it amazing how God kept you when the enemy thought he had defeated you? Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today, and what blessing has God already placed in your life this week? Today, we are shifting our focus away from fear, frustration, and lack, and we are stepping boldly into thanksgiving, because gratitude unlocks doors that complaining never can. When you begin to thank God before the miracle appears, chains begin to break, favor begins to move, and joy begins to rise in your spirit. Do you believe your praise can change the atmosphere around your life today? If you are believing for peace, healing, restoration, or financial breakthrough, type Amen in the comments and declare that this Sunday belongs to the Lord. As this prayer begins, I want you to open your heart completely and allow the presence of God to fill every empty place within you. Share this message with someone who needs encouragement today, because one prayer, one moment of gratitude, and one touch from God can change everything. Beloved, there is something powerful that happens when a child of God chooses gratitude in the middle of uncertainty. Thanksgiving is not just a polite response after the blessing arrives. It is a spiritual weapon that shifts atmospheres, breaks heaviness, and invites the presence of God into every area of your life. Have you ever noticed how different your spirit feels when you stop focusing on what is missing and start thanking God for what He has already done? Tell me in the comments, what is one thing you are grateful for today? Some people think gratitude is small, but heaven sees it as powerful faith. Every time you thank God while you are still waiting, you are declaring that His promises are greater than your present situation. Isn't it amazing how one sincere moment of thanksgiving can suddenly bring peace into a troubled mind? Have you ever felt your anxiety begin to leave the moment you started worshiping and thanking God? There are people listening to this message who have been carrying emotional burdens for far too long. You have allowed disappointment, frustration, and exhaustion to sit in places where gratitude should be living. But today, God is calling you to shift your focus. Instead of replaying every painful memory, He wants you to remember every prayer He already answered. Can you think of a time God made a way for you when there seemed to be no way at all? Tell me in the comments where God has shown up for you before. Gratitude changes the atmosphere because thanksgiving invites heaven into earthly situations. Complaining magnifies problems, but gratitude magnifies God. Fear says the situation will never improve, but thanksgiving says God is still working behind the scenes. Have you ever thanked God in advance for something you had not yet seen happen? Did you notice how your faith started growing stronger? The enemy wants you trapped in negativity because he understands that a grateful believer is dangerous. A thankful heart cannot easily be defeated because gratitude keeps your eyes fixed on God's power instead of life's pressure. Isn't it incredible how praise can give you strength even when nothing around you has changed yet? What situation are you trusting God to turn around right now? Some of you woke up this morning carrying silent battles nobody else knows about. You smiled in front of people while secretly fighting discouragement, financial pressure, emotional pain, or uncertainty about your future. But even in that struggle, God has still been faithful. You are still breathing. You are still standing. You are still covered by grace. Have you taken a moment lately just to thank God for sustaining you through difficult seasons? Tell me, What storm did God bring you through that you never thought you would survive? There is power in remembering what God has already done. When you reflect on his faithfulness, your perspective begins to change. Suddenly, what once looked impossible no longer feels bigger than your God. Gratitude reminds your spirit that the same God who protected you before will protect you again. Do you remember a season when you thought everything was over, but God surprised you with breakthrough at the last moment? Sometimes we become so focused on future blessings that we forget to appreciate present miracles. The fact that you woke up today is a miracle. The fact that your heart is still beating is a miracle. The fact that God is still giving you another opportunity to grow, heal, and move forward is a miracle. When was the last time you thanked God for simply keeping you alive? Have you thanked him for the small blessings that often go unnoticed? A grateful spirit creates room for joy to grow. Joy is not dependent on perfect circumstances. Joy comes from confidence in God's goodness. That is why two people can walk through similar storms while one remains hopeful and the other becomes bitter. Gratitude protects your heart from becoming consumed by negativity. Have you noticed how people who constantly complain usually carry heaviness everywhere they go? What happens inside your spirit when you begin praising God instead? Some of you have spent too much time focusing on doors that closed, relationships that ended, opportunities that disappeared, or prayers that seemed delayed. But what if God was protecting you from something you could not yet see? What if those closed doors were actually acts of divine mercy? Have you ever looked back at a disappointment and later realized God was saving you from greater pain? Thanksgiving changes the atmosphere because it shifts your attention from limitation to possibility. Instead of saying, "I have nothing," gratitude says, "God has already given me more than I deserve." Instead of saying, "I will never recover," gratitude says, "If God brought me this far, he is not finished with me yet." Can you feel your faith rising when you begin speaking words of gratitude instead of defeat? There are blessings attached to gratitude that many people overlook. Gratitude protects your peace. Gratitude strengthens your faith. Gratitude opens your spiritual eyes to recognize opportunities and miracles around you. A thankful person walks differently because they carry expectation. Do you know someone whose positive spirit changes the atmosphere every time they enter a room? Have you ever wondered how different your life could feel if gratitude became your daily habit? Beloved, there is also healing in gratitude. Some wounds remain open because people stay focused on pain instead of healing. But when you begin thanking God for restoration before the process is complete, your heart slowly becomes lighter. Gratitude does not deny pain, it simply refuses to let pain have the final word. What area of your life needs healing today? Emotional healing, financial healing, spiritual healing. Tell me in the comments what you are believing God for. God never intended for his people to live trapped in constant despair. He created you to walk in peace, confidence, and expectation. But those things grow stronger when thanksgiving becomes part of your lifestyle. Even Jesus gave thanks before miracles happened. Before the multiplication came, thanksgiving came first. Isn't that powerful? Have you ever considered that your gratitude might be preparing the atmosphere for your next breakthrough? Some of you are waiting for perfect conditions before you decide to praise God, but faith does not wait for visible evidence. Real faith thanks God while the answer is still forming. Real faith praises God while healing is still taking place. Real faith says, "Lord, I trust you even now." Have you ever thanked God through tears? Have you ever worshipped while still carrying unanswered questions? When gratitude fills your mouth, negativity begins losing its grip over your life. Your conversations change. Your mindset changes. Even your relationships begin to change because grateful people release different energy into the atmosphere around them. Imagine how much stronger your home could feel if Thanksgiving became louder than complaining. Imagine how much peace could enter your mind if gratitude became your first response every morning. What would happen if you started each day by thanking God before touching your phone or worrying about your problems? The atmosphere around your life matters more than many people realize. Some atmospheres carry fear, tension, and hopelessness, while others carry peace, faith, and expectation. Gratitude helps create an atmosphere where God's presence is welcomed and where joy can grow freely. Isn't it beautiful how one prayer of thanksgiving can suddenly shift the entire mood of your heart? Tell me in the comments, what are you thanking God for today, even before the breakthrough arrives? Beloved, there is a dimension of faith that many people never step into because they only know how to thank God after they see visible results. But heaven responds to a different kind of believer, the believer who praises God before the door opens, before the healing manifests, before the financial breakthrough appears, and before the answer becomes visible in the natural. Have you ever thanked God for something that had not happened yet? Tell me in the comments, what breakthrough are you believing God for right now? Faith is not simply believing that God can do something. Faith is living with confidence that He is already working behind the scenes. Thanksgiving before the breakthrough is a declaration that says, God, I trust your timing, your power, and your promises. Isn't it powerful to know that gratitude can become evidence of your trust in God? Have you ever felt peace come over you simply because you stopped worrying and started thanking Him instead? So many people spend their days speaking fear, frustration, and doubt over situations that require faith. But every time you thank God in advance, you interrupt the cycle of negativity and shift your atmosphere into expectation. Instead of saying, nothing will ever change, your spirit begins saying, my miracle is already in motion. Can you feel the difference between a heart filled with fear and a heart filled with expectation? Which one have you been feeding lately? There are moments when your natural eyes cannot yet see what God is preparing. The opportunity has not appeared. The relationship has not been restored. The finances have not improved. But gratitude says, Lord, even if I cannot see it yet, I know you are still working. Have you ever looked back at a difficult season and realized God was arranging things long before you noticed? Tell me about a time God surprised you with an answer you never expected. The enemy wants you to become discouraged during the waiting season because discouragement weakens expectation. But Thanksgiving protects your faith while you wait. Gratitude keeps your spirit alive when circumstances try to convince you to quit. Isn't it amazing how worship can strengthen you even before the situation changes? Have you ever entered prayer feeling heavy, but left feeling lighter after thanking God? Some people only celebrate God after the miracle arrives, but mature faith celebrates Him while the miracle is still forming. That kind of faith confuses the enemy because it refuses to be controlled by temporary conditions. Imagine praising God while your prayers are still unanswered. Imagine thanking Him while the process still feels uncomfortable. That is real spiritual confidence. Could it be that your thanksgiving today is preparing the way for tomorrow's testimony? Beloved, there are blessings connected to expectation. Expectation changes how you walk, how you speak, and how you think. A person expecting breakthrough carries different energy than someone expecting defeat. Have you ever noticed how hopeful people often inspire everyone around them? What kind of atmosphere are your words creating in your home and in your spirit right now? Thanking God before the breakthrough also develops spiritual endurance. Waiting seasons can either build your faith or drain your faith depending on your focus. If all you focus on is delay, frustration will grow. But if you focus on God's faithfulness, peace begins to rise. What has God already brought you through that proves He is able to handle your current situation too? Tell me in the comments, what past victory reminds you that God is still faithful today? Sometimes God delays visible answers because He is strengthening your character, while preparing the blessing. Many people want immediate results, but God often works deeper than the surface. He is shaping your patience, stretching your faith, and teaching you how to trust Him completely. Have you ever realized that the waiting season changed you in ways the blessing alone never could? There are people listening right now who feel emotionally exhausted because they have prayed about the same issue for a long time. You may feel tired of waiting for restoration, healing, direction, or provision. But hear this clearly: your waiting season is not proof that God has abandoned you. Sometimes heaven is silent because heaven is working. Have you ever misunderstood God's silence as rejection, only to later discover He was protecting and preparing you? Thanksgiving before the breakthrough is also an act of spiritual warfare. The enemy expects you to complain, doubt, and lose hope. But when you lift your hands and thank God anyway, you send a message into the spirit realm that your faith cannot be shaken easily. Isn't there something powerful about praising God while life still feels uncertain? Have you ever experienced strength entering your spirit during worship, even while your problems still existed? Some miracles begin the moment your mindset changes. Before circumstances transform externally, God often transforms you internally. Gratitude renews your perspective. Suddenly, instead of obsessing over what is wrong, you begin recognizing signs of God's goodness all around you. The breath in your lungs becomes a blessing. The peace in your mind becomes a blessing. The lessons from your struggle become a blessing. When was the last time you paused long enough to thank God for the things you once prayed for? Beloved, expectation attracts movement. People who truly believe God is about to move do not live with defeated attitudes. They prepare their hearts. They prepare their minds. They prepare their faith. If you knew God was about to release breakthrough into your life, how differently would you think today? What fear would you finally let go of? What prayer would you start praying more boldly? There is also joy connected to thankful expectation. Joy grows when you stop measuring God's faithfulness only by visible results. Joy grows when you trust that His promises remain true, even during uncomfortable seasons. Some of you are one breakthrough away from a completely different chapter in your life. But the enemy wants discouragement to make you quit too early. Have you ever been thankful later that you did not give up during a difficult season? God often moves suddenly after long periods of waiting. One phone call can change everything. One opportunity can shift your future. One answered prayer can restore years of pain. Isn't it comforting to know that God can turn situations around faster than you expect? Tell me in the comments, what sudden breakthrough are you praying for right now? Your gratitude today is evidence that you still believe tomorrow can improve. Your praise today is proof that your hope is still alive. Every "thank you, Lord" becomes a declaration that fear will not control your future. Can you imagine how different your life would feel if thanksgiving became stronger than worry every single day? Beloved, do not underestimate the power of praising God before the answer arrives. Some chains break during worship. Some burdens lift during thanksgiving. Some doors open because someone chose faith instead of fear. The atmosphere shifts when gratitude enters the room. Your spirit shifts when expectation rises inside you. Have you noticed how impossible situations begin looking smaller when your focus returns to God's power instead of your limitations? Even now, while you are listening, God may already be arranging conversations, opportunities, healing, restoration, and divine connections that you cannot yet see. Heaven is never inactive. God is never careless with your prayers. Every tear, every prayer, every moment of faith has meaning before Him. What would happen if you truly believed that your breakthrough was closer than you think? What would change if you started thanking God today as if the answer was already on the way? Beloved, one of the greatest weapons God has given His people is joy. Not temporary happiness that depends on perfect circumstances, but deep spiritual joy that remains steady even when life becomes unpredictable. The enemy understands the power of joy, which is why he constantly attacks your peace, your mind, and your emotions. Have you noticed how negativity tries to drain your strength little by little? Tell me in the comments what situation has been trying to steal your joy recently. Joy is spiritual strength because it keeps you standing when pressure tries to break you. Some people think strength only comes from physical ability or emotional toughness, but true strength begins in the spirit. When your spirit is strong, fear loses its control over you. When your spirit is strong, discouragement cannot easily dominate your thoughts. Have you ever surprised yourself by remaining peaceful during a difficult situation because God gave you unexpected strength? There are people listening right now who have been carrying silent, emotional battles. Some of you smile in public while privately fighting anxiety, stress, disappointment, or exhaustion. Others are overwhelmed by uncertainty about the future. But beloved, God never intended for you to live consumed by fear every day. What burden have you been carrying that you need to release to God today? Have you been honest with God lately about how tired you truly feel? The enemy wants your attention fixed on problems because whatever controls your focus often controls your emotions. If you constantly focus on fear, fear grows stronger. If you constantly focus on disappointment, heaviness increases. But joy shifts your focus back to God's goodness and power. Isn't it amazing how one moment in God's presence can suddenly calm a troubled heart? Have you ever entered prayer feeling anxious, but left feeling peaceful afterward? Joy does not mean pretending problems do not exist. Joy means believing that God is greater than those problems. It means refusing to allow temporary situations to define your entire future. Some storms are real, but so is God's faithfulness. Some battles are painful, but so is God's power to sustain you through them. Can you think of a difficult season where God gave you strength that you did not naturally have on your own? Many people lose their peace because they spend too much time feeding fear. Every day they replay negative thoughts, imagine worst-case scenarios, and carry stress about things they cannot control. But joy begins to grow when you change what you feed your spirit. What voices have been influencing your mindset lately? Are you feeding your spirit faith, hope, and gratitude, or are you constantly feeding fear and discouragement? Beloved, joy is not weakness. Joy is spiritual resistance against darkness. Every time you choose worship over worry, you weaken the enemy's grip over your emotions. Every time you praise God in difficult seasons, you remind yourself that your circumstances are temporary, but God's promises remain permanent. Have you ever noticed how worship changes the atmosphere around you, even when nothing external has changed yet? Stress has become normal for many people, but God did not design you to live trapped in constant emotional exhaustion. Some people wake up already worried. Others go to sleep overwhelmed by pressure about finances, relationships, health, or the future. But joy interrupts that cycle because joy reconnects you to God's peace. What has been causing the greatest stress in your life lately? Tell me in the comments what area you are trusting God to strengthen. There is healing in joy. Some emotional wounds stay open because people remain trapped in bitterness, anger, or hopelessness. But joy begins restoring areas inside you that fear tried to damage. Joy reminds your spirit that painful seasons do not last forever. Have you ever looked back and realized that God carried you through something you thought would completely destroy you? The enemy attacks joy because joyful people become spiritually dangerous. A joyful believer is harder to discourage. A joyful believer carries peace into difficult environments. A joyful believer spreads hope to others without even realizing it. Isn't it powerful how one person filled with God's peace can shift the atmosphere in an entire room? Have you ever met someone whose joy encouraged you during your own difficult season? Some people are waiting for perfect conditions before they allow themselves to experience joy. They say, "I will have peace when the money comes," or "I will relax when everything finally works out." But if your joy depends only on external success, your peace will always feel fragile. True joy is rooted in knowing God is with you no matter what season you are facing. What would happen if you decided to protect your peace even before your situation changes? Beloved, fear weakens vision. Fear makes people expect failure before they even try. Fear convinces people that nothing will improve. But joy renews expectation. Joy reminds you that God still has possibilities beyond what your natural eyes can see. Have you ever almost given up on something, only for God to surprise you at the last moment? Joy also strengthens relationships. People carrying unresolved fear and stress often spread negativity into every conversation and environment around them. But when God's joy fills your spirit, your words become lighter, your presence becomes calmer, and your heart becomes healthier. Can you imagine how different your home could feel if joy replaced tension more often? What atmosphere are you creating around the people closest to you? Sometimes God allows pressure not to destroy you, but to teach you how to depend on Him more deeply. Difficult seasons reveal what is truly controlling your heart. Pressure exposes fear, insecurity, and unbelief. But it also creates opportunities for faith and joy to grow stronger. Have you ever discovered strength inside yourself during hardship that you did not know you had before? There are listeners right now who feel emotionally drained from carrying too much responsibility. You have been trying to hold everything together for everyone else while secretly feeling overwhelmed inside. But beloved, you were never meant to carry life's burdens alone. God wants to exchange your heaviness for peace. When was the last time you truly rested emotionally in God's presence instead of constantly worrying about tomorrow? Joy reminds you that your story is not over yet. Fear says the situation will never improve, but joy says God is still writing your testimony. Stress says everything is falling apart, but joy says God can still bring beauty from brokenness. Discouragement says you are defeated, but joy says heaven still has a plan for your future. Which voice have you been listening to most lately? Beloved, protecting your joy requires intentional choices. You cannot constantly surround yourself with negativity and expect your spirit to remain strong. You cannot feed your mind fear every day and expect peace to grow naturally. Joy grows where faith, gratitude, worship, and God's presence are welcomed. What changes might you need to make to protect your peace and strengthen your spirit in this season? There is also power in remembering how faithful God has already been. Sometimes joy returns when you stop focusing only on current struggles and begin remembering previous victories. The same God who carried you before is still carrying you now. The same God who opened doors before can open them again. Have you taken time lately to thank God for past breakthroughs instead of only focusing on present problems? Joy is contagious. When your spirit becomes anchored in God's peace, you naturally become a source of encouragement for others. Your testimony strengthens people. Your faith inspires people. Your calmness during difficult seasons reminds others that God is real. Isn't it beautiful how your healing can become someone else's hope? Tell me in the comments, what has God already brought you through that proves He is still faithful today? Beloved, sometimes we become so focused on the battles we are currently facing that we forget how many storms God has already brought us through. You may be looking at your present struggle, wondering how things will work out, but the very fact that you are still standing today is already proof of God's faithfulness and mercy over your life. Have you taken a moment lately to thank God for everything He already carried you through? Tell me in the comments, what is one battle you survived that you once thought would break you completely? There were seasons when you cried silently, seasons when you felt abandoned, seasons when you did not know how you would recover emotionally, financially, or spiritually. Yet somehow God sustained you. Somehow, grace kept holding you together even when you felt weak inside. Isn't it amazing how God protected you in moments when you did not even realize He was working behind the scenes? Can you remember a time when things looked impossible, but God made a way anyway? Some of you listening today almost gave up during previous seasons of your life. You were emotionally exhausted. You were overwhelmed by fear, disappointment, betrayal, or uncertainty. But heaven would not allow your story to end there. God's mercy kept speaking over your life, even while you were struggling to keep moving forward. Have you ever looked back and realized that you were stronger than you thought because God was carrying you all along? The enemy wanted your pain to convince you that God had forgotten you. He wanted your delays to make you question your purpose. He wanted your disappointments to make you lose confidence in God's promises. But beloved, if God truly abandoned you, you would not still be here today with breath in your body and purpose in your spirit. Isn't your survival itself evidence that God still has a plan for your future? What does it mean to you personally that God preserved your life through difficult seasons? There are battles people saw publicly, but there are also hidden battles only God knows about. Some of you fought emotional warfare in silence. Others battled anxiety behind closed doors while still trying to appear strong in front of everyone else. Some carried heartbreak, rejection, or loneliness that nobody fully understood. But God saw every tear, every sleepless night, and every moment you wanted to quit. Have you ever felt comforted simply by knowing that God understood your pain even when nobody else did? Mercy is powerful because mercy keeps showing up even when we feel undeserving. There were moments when you made mistakes, moments when fear affected your decisions, and moments when you doubted yourself. Yet God's mercy continued covering you. Isn't it incredible how God can remain faithful even during seasons when we struggle with weakness? Tell me in the comments, where have you seen God's mercy appear in your life unexpectedly? Some people underestimate their own testimony because they compare their journey to someone else's. But your survival story matters. The fact that you endured what tried to destroy you is evidence of God's sustaining power. Some people would have collapsed under the pressure you survived, yet God strengthened you day by day. Have you ever paused to realize how far you have actually come emotionally, spiritually, or mentally? Beloved, every battle you survived carries lessons that can strengthen your future. Painful seasons teach wisdom. Waiting seasons teach patience. Difficult seasons teach dependence on God. Sometimes the greatest growth happens during the hardest chapters of life. Looking back now, can you identify ways your struggles actually changed you for the better? What lesson did God teach you through your most difficult season? There were moments when you thought the battle would never end. You prayed prayers through tears. You asked questions without immediate answers. You waited longer than you expected. But even in silence, God was still working. Have you ever realized later that God was protecting you during a delay you once complained about? The faithfulness of God is not proven only during easy seasons. Anyone can praise during comfortable moments, but true faith often grows during hardship. Your testimony becomes powerful because it reveals what God can do through broken situations. Isn't it beautiful how God can bring strength out of weakness and purpose out of pain? Tell me about a season that increased your faith instead of destroying it. Some listeners right now are facing fresh battles, and fear is whispering that they will not survive this season. But beloved, if God carried you through previous storms, He can carry you through this one too. The same God who comforted you before still has power to restore, strengthen, and provide again. Have you been reminding yourself lately of what God has already done in your life? What past victory gives you confidence for your current situation? The enemy wants you trapped in discouragement because discouraged people often forget their testimonies. They forget the prayers God already answered. They forget the doors God already opened. They forget the impossible situations God already resolved. But gratitude revives memory. Gratitude reminds your spirit that God has always been faithful. Have you noticed how remembering previous breakthroughs can suddenly strengthen your faith again? Beloved, some battles were meant to reveal your resilience. You did not realize how much strength God placed inside you until pressure forced it to rise. Some storms revealed courage you never knew you possessed. Some painful seasons awakened deeper faith inside your spirit. Isn't it powerful how God can use difficult moments to uncover strength hidden within you? There were relationships you survived losing. There were disappointments you survived enduring. There were financial pressures, emotional struggles, and moments of confusion that could have consumed your peace completely. Yet somehow you are still moving forward. That is not luck. That is grace. That is mercy. That is the sustaining hand of God. Can you see now how God kept protecting you even in moments when you felt vulnerable? Sometimes survival itself becomes a testimony to others. People watching your journey may not understand how you remained standing through everything you faced. But your endurance reveals God's power in your life. Your faith during hardship becomes evidence that God truly sustains his people. Have you ever realized that your story might be encouraging someone else without you even knowing it? God's mercy also means your past does not have authority over your future. Some people remain trapped by guilt, shame, or regret from previous mistakes. But mercy reminds you that God still writes new chapters. The battles you survived are not meant to imprison you emotionally forever. They are meant to remind you how faithful God has been. What would happen if you stopped defining yourself by old pain and started seeing yourself through God's grace instead? Beloved, every scar carries evidence of survival. Every healed wound carries evidence of restoration. Every difficult chapter you overcame carries proof that God never stopped watching over you. Even now, while you face new challenges, his mercy remains active in your life. Have you thanked God recently not just for what he gave you, but for what he protected you from? There are blessings you never recognized because they arrived disguised as delays, redirections, or closed doors. Some prayers were answered differently than you expected because God could see dangers you could not yet understand. Looking back now, can you identify moments when God's protection appeared in ways you did not recognize at first? Beloved, your survival is not accidental. God preserved you for purpose. He carried you through storms because your story is still unfolding. The enemy tried to silence you through pain, but grace kept speaking over your life. Fear tried to stop you, but mercy kept moving you forward. What if the very battles you survived are preparing you to walk into greater purpose, deeper faith, and stronger peace than you have ever known before? Beloved, Thanksgiving is far more powerful than many people realize. It is not just words spoken during good moments or a quick response after receiving a blessing. Thanksgiving carries spiritual power that can release peace into troubled hearts, healing into wounded places, restoration into broken situations, and blessings into areas that once felt empty. Have you ever experienced your entire mood changing after spending time thanking God? Tell me in the comments, what area of your life needs God's peace and restoration today? Many people search for peace in external things while neglecting the condition of their spirit. Some look for peace in money, success, relationships, or recognition, yet still feel restless inside. But true peace begins when your heart reconnects with gratitude and trust in God. Isn't it amazing how a thankful heart can feel calm even in the middle of uncertainty? Have you ever felt peace arrive during prayer before your situation actually changed? Thanksgiving shifts your focus away from fear and redirects your attention toward God's faithfulness. Fear magnifies problems, but gratitude magnifies God's power. Worry constantly asks, what if things get worse? But Thanksgiving says, God has already carried me through before. Which voice has been louder in your mind lately? Fear or gratitude? What would change in your life if Thanksgiving became your daily habit instead of occasional moments? There are people listening right now who are emotionally exhausted from carrying invisible burdens. Some of you have been holding on to stress, disappointment, regret, or heartbreak for so long that your spirit feels heavy. But beloved, gratitude has a way of lifting emotional weight from your heart. It reminds you that God is still present even during difficult seasons. Have you ever entered prayer feeling emotionally drained, but left feeling lighter after worship and thanksgiving? Healing often begins in places where gratitude grows. Some wounds remain open because people stay trapped in bitterness, anger, or hopelessness. But when thanksgiving fills your spirit, healing slowly begins entering areas pain once controlled. Gratitude does not erase difficult memories, but it changes the power those memories have over you. Can you think of a season where God helped heal emotional pain you thought would never leave? Beloved, there are blessings hidden inside thanksgiving that many people overlook. Gratitude softens hardened hearts. Gratitude restores perspective. Gratitude renews hope when discouragement tries to take over. Have you noticed how negative thinking drains energy, while gratitude brings fresh strength into your spirit? Tell me in the comments, what blessing are you thanking God for today, even if life is not perfect yet? Some people delay gratitude because they are waiting for ideal circumstances. They tell themselves, I will thank God after everything improves. But thanksgiving is not meant to wait until the storm ends. Thanksgiving is powerful during the storm because it keeps your spirit anchored in faith while life feels uncertain. Have you ever praised God while still waiting for answers? Did you notice how your faith began growing stronger in the process? Peace is one of the greatest blessings Thanksgiving releases. Many people live with constant mental noise. Fear about tomorrow, stress about finances, anxiety about relationships, and pressure from responsibilities. But gratitude quiets the mind because it reminds you that God is still in control. When was the last time you truly rested emotionally in God's presence without carrying every burden alone? What worry do you need to surrender to God today? Beloved, restoration begins when your perspective changes. Some people only see what they lost, but gratitude helps you recognize what still remains. The enemy wants you focused on disappointment, but God wants you to remember His goodness. Even after painful seasons, there are still reasons to thank Him. You still have breath in your body. You still have purpose in your spirit. You still have another opportunity to move forward. Isn't it powerful how gratitude can help you notice blessings you once ignored? There are listeners right now praying for healing. Emotional healing, financial healing, relational healing, and spiritual healing. Some of you are tired of carrying pain that nobody else fully understands. But beloved, God is not distant from your struggle. His peace can reach places inside you that no person can fully heal. Have you been honest with God lately about what hurts the most in your heart? Tell me in the comments, what area are you trusting God to restore? Thanksgiving also changes the atmosphere around your life. A grateful spirit releases different energy into homes, relationships, and conversations. Negative environments often grow heavier through constant complaining, criticism, and fear. But gratitude shifts the emotional climate because it invites peace instead of tension. Can you imagine how different your home would feel if Thanksgiving became louder than frustration every day? Some blessings are delayed because people remain spiritually focused on lack instead of possibility. Gratitude creates expectation. It reminds your spirit that God is still capable of opening doors, creating opportunities, and turning situations around unexpectedly. Have you ever looked back and realized that God was working behind the scenes while you thought nothing was happening? Beloved, Thanksgiving also protects your heart from becoming bitter. Life can wound people deeply. Betrayal, disappointment, rejection, and hardship can slowly harden the heart if left unchecked. But gratitude keeps your spirit soft enough to continue trusting God even after painful experiences. Have you ever met someone who went through difficult seasons but still carried peace and kindness? What do you think kept their spirit strong? There is something powerful about thanking God before the breakthrough arrives. Thanksgiving before the miracle is an act of faith. It says, "Lord, I trust you even while I wait." That kind of gratitude keeps hope alive during difficult seasons. What promise are you still believing God for right now? Have you been praising Him only after answers appear, or have you learned to thank Him while waiting too? Beloved, God's blessings are not always material. Sometimes the greatest blessings are peace of mind, emotional healing, restored joy, healthy relationships, wisdom, and spiritual growth. Some of you have survived seasons that should have destroyed your peace completely, yet somehow God sustained you. Isn't that a blessing worth thanking Him for? Can you identify ways God protected you emotionally and spiritually even when life felt difficult? Gratitude also strengthens relationships with others. People who constantly focus on negativity often spread heaviness into every environment they enter. But thankful people bring encouragement, hope, and warmth into the lives of those around them. What kind of atmosphere do your words create for your family and friends? Are people feeling lighter after talking with you, or heavier? Sometimes restoration happens slowly, one prayer at a time, one moment of healing at a time. God does not always restore everything instantly, but He faithfully works within the process. Gratitude helps you remain patient while healing unfolds. Have you ever realized that healing was happening gradually, even when you thought nothing was changing? Beloved, there is freedom in thanksgiving. Fear loses power when gratitude grows stronger. Stress loses control when peace fills your spirit. Discouragement weakens when you begin remembering how faithful God has already been. Your atmosphere changes when your focus changes. What would happen if you woke up tomorrow determined to thank God before worrying about anything else? Even now, while you are listening, God may already be restoring areas of your life you thought would never recover. Healing may already be unfolding in places you cannot yet fully see. Peace may already be rising inside you, while your circumstances are still shifting. Blessings may already be moving toward your future. Have you considered that your thanksgiving today might be opening doors for the restoration, healing, and overflow you have been praying for? Beloved, one of the greatest transformations that can happen in your spiritual life begins when you develop a grateful heart. Gratitude changes the way you see your life, your future, your relationships, and even your daily struggles. Many people miss miracles, opportunities, and blessings because they become so focused on what is missing that they fail to recognize what God is already doing around them. Have you ever realized later that God was blessing you in ways you did not appreciate at the time? Tell me in the comments. What is one everyday blessing you are thankful for today? A grateful heart sharpens your spiritual vision. Instead of constantly dwelling on problems, gratitude helps you notice signs of God's goodness in ordinary moments. Suddenly, waking up with strength becomes a blessing. Having peace in your mind becomes a blessing. The people who truly care about you become blessings you no longer take for granted. Isn't it amazing how gratitude can make small moments feel meaningful again? Have you been overlooking blessings simply because they became familiar to you? Some people spend so much time chasing bigger things that they forget to appreciate what they already have. They pray for tomorrow's miracles while ignoring today's mercies. But beloved, every single day carries evidence of God's goodness if you slow down long enough to recognize it. When was the last time you thanked God for the simple things? Your health, your breath, your ability to keep moving forward despite challenges. What everyday gift from God have you been taking for granted lately? Gratitude changes your perspective during difficult seasons too. Instead of seeing only obstacles, a grateful heart begins looking for lessons, growth, and hidden blessings even inside hardship. That does not mean pain suddenly disappears, but it means pain no longer becomes the only thing you notice. Have you ever gone through a difficult season and later realized God was teaching you something valuable through it? Beloved, there are miracles happening around you every day that you may not immediately recognize. Some miracles are dramatic, but others are quiet and gradual. Sometimes the miracle is emotional healing little by little. Sometimes the miracle is strength to survive another difficult day. Sometimes the miracle is peace returning to your mind after a season of fear. Have you ever experienced a quiet blessing from God that changed your life in ways others could not even see? A grateful heart also positions you to recognize opportunities that negativity would normally blind you to. Discouraged people often miss open doors because they expect disappointment everywhere they look. But thankful people carry expectation, and expectation changes what you notice. What opportunity might God already be placing in front of you that fear or negativity has prevented you from seeing clearly? Many people think blessings only come in large visible forms like money, success, or recognition. But some of the greatest blessings are invisible. Wisdom is a blessing. Peace is a blessing. Protection is a blessing. Discernment is a blessing. Healing is a blessing. The ability to sleep peacefully at night is a blessing. Have you taken time lately to thank God for the blessings that cannot always be measured by material things? Beloved, gratitude protects your heart from constant dissatisfaction. In today's world, many people compare their lives to others and end up feeling empty, even while surrounded by blessings. Comparison steals joy because it keeps people focused on what they think they lack. But gratitude reconnects you to appreciation. Have you ever noticed how comparison creates frustration while gratitude creates peace? What might happen if you spent more time appreciating your own journey instead of comparing it to someone else's? Some listeners right now are waiting for major breakthroughs, and there is nothing wrong with praying for bigger things. But while you are waiting, do not miss the miracles already surrounding your life. The fact that God protected you through previous seasons is a miracle. The fact that your mind is still functioning after emotional battles is a miracle. The fact that you are still growing spiritually is a miracle. Can you think of a quiet victory in your life that deserves more gratitude than you have been giving it? A grateful heart also changes the way you treat people. When gratitude fills your spirit, you become more aware of the value of relationships, kindness, and support. You stop assuming people will always be there and begin appreciating them more intentionally. Have you expressed gratitude lately to the people who stood beside you during difficult times? Who in your life deserves appreciation that you may have forgotten to express? Beloved, opportunities often appear disguised as challenges. Some doors only open because you were forced out of your comfort zone. Some growth only happened because life became uncomfortable enough to push you forward. At the time, it may have felt painful, but later you realized God was positioning you for something greater. Have you ever experienced a setback that later became one of the greatest turning points in your life? Gratitude strengthens faith because it constantly reminds you of God's previous faithfulness. Every remembered blessing becomes evidence that God is still active in your life. When fear tries to convince you that nothing will improve, gratitude reminds you that God has already brought you through impossible situations before. What past miracle gives you confidence that God can still move in your current season? Sometimes people overlook opportunities because they expect God to move only in dramatic ways. But God often works through ordinary moments, simple conversations, unexpected connections, or quiet seasons of preparation. A grateful heart stays spiritually alert because it understands that every day carries potential for divine movement. Have you ever realized later that a simple moment or conversation was actually part of God's plan for your future? Beloved, gratitude also increases emotional resilience. People who constantly focus on negativity often become emotionally drained, hopeless, and discouraged. But thankful people develop stronger inner stability because they regularly remember reasons for hope. Gratitude does not deny problems, but it refuses to let problems become the center of everything. What have you been focusing on most lately? Your burdens or your blessings? There are listeners today who have prayed for things they now consider normal. At one point, you prayed for the very opportunities, relationships, or breakthroughs you currently overlook. Isn't it interesting how quickly people forget the prayers God already answered? Have you gone back lately to thank God for prayers that once seemed impossible? Beloved, every day carries opportunities for growth, wisdom, healing, and favor. But if your heart becomes consumed by frustration, you may walk past those opportunities without noticing them. Gratitude keeps your spirit sensitive and open. It helps you recognize that God's goodness is not limited to major events alone. What small blessing today could completely change your perspective if you truly appreciated it? Some of you are entering seasons where God is preparing new opportunities, fresh connections, restored peace, and unexpected favor. But preparation often begins with gratitude. A thankful heart becomes fertile ground for greater blessings because it knows how to value what God provides. How would your life change if gratitude became your first response every morning instead of stress or worry? Beloved, recognizing daily miracles changes the atmosphere around your life. Complaining creates heaviness, but gratitude creates expectation and joy. A thankful spirit carries different energy into homes, conversations, and relationships. People can feel the difference when someone truly walks in peace and appreciation. What atmosphere are you creating around the people closest to you right now? Even now, there may be blessings surrounding you that you have not fully recognized yet. God may already be opening doors quietly. Healing may already be unfolding gradually. Wisdom may already be developing through your current experiences. Miracles may already be happening in ways that seem ordinary at first glance. Have you considered that some of the greatest blessings in your life might already be present, waiting for you to finally recognize them with a grateful heart? Beloved, every Sunday is more than just the beginning of another week. Sunday is a divine opportunity to reset your spirit, renew your mind, and prepare your heart for what God is about to do next in your life. So many people enter a new week carrying leftover stress, fear, disappointment, and emotional exhaustion from previous days. But God never intended for you to walk into your future weighed down by yesterday's burdens. Have you taken time today to truly reset your heart before God? Tell me in the comments, what are you believing God for in this new week? Sunday is sacred because it gives you a moment to pause and reconnect with heaven before life becomes busy again. The world constantly pulls at your attention, your energy, and your peace, but Sunday reminds you to slow down long enough to hear God's voice clearly. Isn't it amazing how one moment in God's presence can completely shift the direction of your mindset? Have you ever started a week differently simply because you spent intentional time with God first? Many people approach a new week already expecting stress, struggle, and frustration because that has become their pattern. They wake up burdened by anxiety about bills, responsibilities, relationships, or uncertainty about the future. But beloved, what if this week could begin with expectation instead of fear? What would happen if you entered this new week believing God was already arranging favor, opportunities, healing, and peace ahead of you? A spiritual reset is important because life has a way of filling your heart with distractions and emotional clutter. Sometimes people carry anger from previous disappointments, guilt from past mistakes, or heaviness from situations they cannot control. But Sunday gives you permission to release those burdens and realign your focus with God's promises. What emotional weight have you been carrying that God is asking you to surrender today? Have you allowed yourself to truly rest emotionally in His presence lately? Beloved, your mindset at the beginning of the week matters more than you realize. The way you think influences the way you respond to challenges, opportunities, and people around you. If fear controls your thoughts, fear will influence your actions. But when your spirit is filled with faith, peace, and expectation, you begin walking differently. Can you imagine how much stronger your week could feel if you started every day with prayer and thanksgiving instead of stress? Sunday is also an opportunity to remember who you are in God. The pressures of life can sometimes make people forget their identity, purpose, and spiritual authority. After difficult seasons, people often begin seeing themselves through pain instead of promise. But beloved, God still calls you chosen, loved, and purposeful even after battles and setbacks. Have you been speaking life over yourself lately? Or have you allowed negative thoughts to shape your identity? There are listeners today who are emotionally tired from carrying the demands of life without enough spiritual renewal. You have been giving energy to everyone else while your own spirit quietly grows weary. But God wants to refresh you, strengthen you, and refill your heart with peace. When was the last time you truly rested in God's presence without rushing through prayer or worship? What area of your life feels the most drained right now? Sunday is not only about rest, it is about preparation. God often prepares people spiritually before He moves them into new opportunities and blessings. Before breakthroughs appear externally, He strengthens hearts internally. That is why spiritual renewal matters so much. Have you ever noticed how clarity often comes after spending intentional quiet time with God? Beloved, a new week carries new possibilities. Some of you are entering weeks filled with opportunities you cannot yet see. Others are walking into divine connections, answered prayers, restored relationships, or unexpected favor. But if your spirit remains trapped in discouragement from previous weeks, you may struggle to recognize what God is opening in front of you. Could it be that God is preparing blessings this week that require a fresh mindset to receive? Fear often grows when people constantly focus on what could go wrong. But Sunday is a reminder to focus again on what God can make right. Instead of replaying every failure, disappointment, or frustration from the past, God invites you to step into hope again. Have you been carrying negative expectations into your future without realizing it? What would change if you started expecting God's goodness instead? Beloved, there is power in beginning the week with gratitude and prayer. Gratitude shifts your focus from pressure to possibility. Prayer strengthens your spirit before challenges arrive. Worship renews your peace before stress has the opportunity to take control. Isn't it beautiful how spiritual preparation can completely change the atmosphere of your entire week? Have you noticed how different your days feel when they begin with God instead of worry? Some people spend Sundays physically resting, but never spiritually resetting. They pause their schedules, but their minds remain consumed with anxiety and emotional heaviness. True renewal happens when your spirit reconnects with God deeply enough for peace to return. What thoughts have been crowding your mind lately that you need to release today? Beloved, entering a new week with confidence requires trust in God's guidance. You may not know every detail about what lies ahead, but you do not need to know everything when you know the one who is leading you. God already sees the doors, opportunities, and challenges ahead of you, and He promises to walk with you through them all. Does it bring you comfort knowing that God is already present in the future you are worried about? Sunday is also an opportunity to rebuild your faith after difficult seasons. Some people enter new weeks emotionally defeated because previous disappointments weakened their hope. But God specializes in renewing strength. He restores joy to tired hearts. He gives fresh peace to anxious minds. Have you ever experienced God renewing your strength after a season where you felt emotionally exhausted? Beloved, every new week is evidence that God is giving you another opportunity to grow, heal, learn, and move forward. Some people never receive the opportunity to see another week. Yet God allowed you to wake up with fresh mercy and new possibilities ahead. Isn't that alone a reason for gratitude? What are you most thankful for as you enter this new week? A spiritual reset also means letting go of things that no longer belong in your spirit. Some people carry bitterness from old wounds into every new season. Others carry fear from past failures. But you cannot fully embrace what God has ahead while remaining chained emotionally to what happened behind you. What do you need to release before this new week begins? Fear, regret, unforgiveness, discouragement. Beloved, confidence grows when your spirit becomes rooted in God's promises instead of unstable circumstances. Life will always have challenges, but peace comes from knowing that God remains faithful through every season. The stronger your connection with Him becomes, the stronger your confidence becomes too. Have you noticed how your perspective changes when you spend consistent time in prayer and worship? This Sunday may look ordinary on the calendar, but spiritually it carries potential for transformation. One prayer can shift your perspective. One moment of worship can restore your peace. One encounter with God can renew your strength for the entire week ahead. Isn't it incredible how quickly God can change the atmosphere inside your spirit when you make room for Him? Beloved, do not underestimate the importance of starting your week spiritually prepared. The battles ahead may require strength. The opportunities ahead may require wisdom. The blessings ahead may require faith to receive fully. But God never sends you into a new season without offering grace, peace, and guidance first. What would happen if you entered this week expecting God to move in ways greater than you have imagined before?